So for the last 6 weeks, we've been going through every Wednesday the Mike Ferry 21-point sales system. So this is week 7. So we're on point 7 of the Mike Ferry 21-point sales system, which is pricing property. So you've gone through the prospecting, you've gone through the listing appointment, and now you have to price the property. So the natural flow to things, isn't that amazing? All right, good stuff. So I wrote down here a list of thoughts on pricing property. There's no particular order of importance, so you decide what's most important for you. Some of this stuff you've heard a number of times before. Some of this stuff might be brand new. Some of this stuff maybe you heard, you forgot about, who knows? But hopefully there will be a couple things in here that will be very, very important. So, but before I start that, let me ask a question to the group. What are some activities you can do that help you with pricing property?
Dun, dun, dun. Go look at houses.
Go look at houses, right? Okay, so go look at houses.
Do a comparable market analysis for that particular property or that listing that you're taking.
Market analysis, there you go. Good job. All right. What else? What else can you do to activities you can do that help with pricing property?
Study the market.
Such as what?
Like days on the market, inventory, how many sold, gives you a good direction.
Yeah, so the market stats, go see homes, valuations. Yeah.
Expired listings.
Expired listings. Expired listings are very helpful pricing property. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. Okay, good. Good. All good things that you can do to help price property. So I wrote down here the first point on pricing property I wrote down is the more you know, the easier it is to price. The more you know, the easier it is to price. So here's what I mean by that. A couple things I wrote down here. Chris mentioned go see property. Yes. So however you want to write it down, go see property, preview property, whatever word works best for you, do that every week to give yourself a stronger knowledge of your local market, which gives you more confidence in pricing. So going to see the homes, going to see the neighborhood, going to see what the view is across the street, how far away they are from the schools, the parks, the entertainment, how close they really are to the freeway. The maps don't show it all. You have to go see the properties to know what's going on out there. Because when a home sells on their neighborhood, does a seller assume that their home is better than the one that sold, typically, in some way or form? Typically, they always think their home is better. Well, yeah, but that one, it doesn't have the upgrades that I do. Oh, no, that one, as you could see, we have a view of what? Well, if you tilt your head this way, you kind of get on one leg and you can actually see that little grass area that's this big? That's the park. All right, got it. Thank you. Right? But they think their home is better. If you don't go see homes, you don't know if it's better or worse or the same. So you have to just assume that they're telling you the truth. Okay. So you have to get out there and go see properties. I wrote down here next, you have to market stats to give yourself stronger knowledge. Going to see properties is one thing, but to Alexis's point, studying the market stats, do you know the inventory? So let me ask you a question. If the month's inventory is going up, should you be more aggressive in pricing your property higher, or should you be more cautious and maybe price it a little bit lower? If the month's inventory is going up, right, there you go. You should be more cautious. Hey, the inventory is going up. We should probably be a little more cautious. If the active listings in the market is going up and the pendings are going down, Should you be aggressive when pricing it high, or should you be more cautious and price it a little bit low? Actives are up, pendings are down. Cautious or aggressive in pricing? Alexis says low. Should be more cautious because, again, more inventory. So now let's, for example, that inventory is going down and the pendings are going up. Can you be a little more aggressive with pricing to price it high? Right. So these are things you can do to study the market stats to know where the pricing is. Being able to know what percentage of homes are selling above list price. That will also help you decide whether or not you can be a little bit more aggressive with pricing. So the market stats is very helpful in giving you the knowledge on pricing property. I wrote down here, knowing what's going on in the community can also help you with pricing property. So, give you an example. Do you think when they build a brand new stadium with hotels and restaurants in a city, does that typically increase the value of homes or decrease the value of homes?
Increase.
It increases. So in the city of Inglewood, California, home prices have gone through the roof because they built that wonderful new SoFi Stadium with all the bells and whistles. But if you don't know that, you might not be pricing the property correctly, or vice versa. What if a city is all of a sudden having really high crime? Let me tell you something. In Los Angeles, selling on Melrose right now is tough. Okay, because for those of you that don't know, Melrose over in a certain corridor is going through a large crime problem, which normally multi-million-dollar homes are a little bit tougher to sell right now. So if you don't know what's going on in the community, you might not be pricing property correctly, high or low. So you need to know what's going on in the community to give yourself the market knowledge when pricing property. So there's a variety of different things you need to do. I wrote down here, don't trust agent photos and comments when doing comps. Don't trust agent and photo comments when doing comps. Why? Why shouldn't you trust agent photos and comps? Help me out here. Why do you think I say that?
They Photoshop too much.
They Photoshop too much. That's a problem. What else?
The agent take the picture themselves.
The agent takes the pictures themselves. That could be good or bad.
Usually bad.
Usually bad. Right. Okay.
Yes.
So what else? Why else not trust the agent comments or photos when comparing property, when doing comps?
Because
What
they're
else?
going to make it in the best, most positive light possible.
Right. Okay. So all correct. So to Alexis's point, they could create photos and Photoshop them. How do I know? How do I know? Because they did it to my house. Okay. When we sold our first home years ago, it had a fireplace. And when they took the photos, the fireplace was not on. But yet when the photos came out, they added the fire to the fireplace. Oh,
My goodness.
makes it
That's
look
crazy.
all warm and fuzzy. Okay. So they could Photoshop the photos so it won't look necessarily as it is. Yulin says they take the photos themselves, which could be a bad thing. Now, here's where it's the opposite effect. They take the photos themselves. We look at it and go, well, my listing's way better than this one, but actually it's just because it was a bad photo. So you could do that. They might only take photos of the good parts. Do typically agents take photos of the parts that need work? No. They take photos of the room that was upgraded. Well, this bathroom's been upgraded. The other three are a disaster, but let's just focus on this one. How do I know that? Because when I bought my last property, we went and saw a property and that's what happened. Or the comments. Are all the comments always true? No. Because if agent comments were always true, every home would be the most amazing home in the history of the world. must see, must see, must see. This unbelievable, magnificent, won't last long family home. When you walk in the door, the archway and these chandeliers, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is like a castle from Disneyland. And then you get there and you're like, this is a fixer. What happened? So you can't always trust the agent comments and photos when doing the comps. You have to see it for yourself. I wrote this down here. This is a powerful line to say when talking about comps. I've been in this property. Because the script says, have you seen this property? Most people will say, no, I haven't seen it. And if you can say, I've been in this property, that is a powerful, powerful line when going through comps and it comes to pricing property. You have to get out there and see the world.
Hey, Robert.
Yes, buddy.
Yeah, just to let you know, when you do comps, also do not use sold, because sold are 3 months ago pendings, right?
Well, possibly. I mean, it could be they went pending 30 days ago. So to Michael's point, and we're going to get into that, is you do have to look at when you're using comps, how long ago did it sell and how long ago did it go pending? Because if it was a 90-day escrow, that could be a little bit tough as well. So yeah, you do have to look at the days. Good point. All right, so I wrote down here a couple rules of thumb. If after 2 weeks you have showings but no offers, the home is 3 to 5% overpriced. If after 2 weeks you have showings but no offers, you're about 3 to 5% overpriced. If after 2 weeks you have no showings and obviously then no offers, you're about 10% overpriced. So general rule of thumb, when you have a listing and you're not getting any offers, that's kind of where you should be at. So you have an $800,000 listing, 2 weeks go by, you have no showings, no offers, you're probably about at least $80,000 overpriced. So you need to go into a price reduction.
Ask a quick question.
Yes.
Or comment, a quick question. What is, do you see an average per showing to one offer? If you price correctly, or if,
Hold on, say it again. What was the question?
what do you think is the average, for every blank showings, you get one offer? Like, what's the average? Do you have an idea?
I don't, because
Or it
every
depends.
market's so different. If it's priced correctly, it's probably 4 to 1.
Yeah,
Maybe
4 to 8 to 1.
less, maybe less in certain marketplaces, maybe
Okay.
more in certain. It also depends on the price point. The higher the price point, the more showings you're going to need, because people are usually less reluctant to rush to throw a $2 million offer on
Right.
something as opposed to 450. So variety of factors. But either way, after 2 weeks, if you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 showings, or how many ever people come through an open house and you don't have any, then you're about 3 to 5% overpriced. So it's a good bearing to keep in there. Now we talked about, Chris had mentioned earlier, expired listings. So an expired listing also gives you a really good track record in terms of pricing property. Here's how. If you want to know how high you can go, before you go on the listing, look in that general area of properties that expired and figure out how overpriced they were. Were they 5% overpriced? Were they 10% overpriced? Were they 2% overpriced? Where were they in terms of your comps, how overpriced they were? That way you know what your limit is on how high you can go on the pricing. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you have a $800,000 listing and you know that about 5% overpriced is the limit when homes are expiring in that marketplace. Well, 5% of 800,000 is 40 grand. So I now know if the seller says, well, I want 850, I'm above that 5% threshold. I have to be strong and say, no, this is going to expire based on the numbers. But if they say 820, okay, I might have some wiggle room. Maybe we can start there. So looking at the properties that expired can give you a little bit of an idea on how high you can go in terms of your pricing if the seller wants a higher price. So make sure you're looking at that particular thing. The expireds are also really great when you're as an objection handler when it comes to price, because in today's market, every seller thinks the home's going to sell, right? That's what they think. And why do they think that? Why does a seller think every home's going to sell?
Hot market.
Who tells them that?
As
Who
a
tells them it's a
realtors.
hot market?
Agents and news.
Yeah, we do. We're sending out flyers. We're all over social media. We're making phone calls. Oh, it's a hot market. You got to sell, 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 sell. So every seller thinks house is going to sell. So yeah, I want 850. I want 900. You all are telling me how hot this market is. You could get me all this money. Great. You need to bring them down to earth a little bit by showing them the expires to say, well, not every home sells. Look at the expires. Look at the canceled. Not everything flies off the market. So we do need to be realistic. Okay. So you have to know that a little bit. Okay. Who is responsible for the price of the property? Who's responsible for what the property is going to sell for?
Agent.
No.
The buyer.
Buyers. The buyers are responsible for the price. The buyers are responsible for what that home is going to go for. It's not the listing agent and it's not the seller. You as the listing agent are simply the messenger, which means when prices go up, you can't take credit. So don't take it personally when prices go down. The buyers, the markets, those are the ones that decide this property is worth 900 or it's not. But you have to keep this in mind too, as to why people say, well, home prices are too high. Not if there's someone who's willing to pay for it. Home prices are only too high when people decide we don't want to pay for that anymore. But it's not you. The seller says, I want 900. I do too. But it's not up to me or you. It's up. And I wrote down here next, the home will sell for whatever it's worth. The home will sell for whatever it's worth. So if all else fails, underprice the property. The home will sell for whatever it's worth. So if all else fails, underprice the property. If you're not sure, if you're looking at the comps and it's a really odd property and you just can't figure out what the pricing is, underprice it. Mike Ferry 101 says, go in at 5% under market value. For two reasons. One, if the seller doesn't like it and they talk you up, they're talking you up to the regular value. Two, if you price it at 5% under, you're going to get more traction and the price will eventually go up. It will sell for the value. How do I know? Auctions. Not real estate auctions necessarily. Anyone ever been to like an auction where they're selling chairs, tables, things like that? You know, or one of those auctions that they do at charities and things like that. Anyone ever been auctioned off? Date nights, things like that. Those are fun. Getting off.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, boy, if you ever want an ego check, do that. Oh, I'm going to go for a fortune. The auctioneer starts lowering the price. That was a tough day in the Hertel household, let me tell you. Anyways, moving on.
Or
Auction.
box lunch socials.
Yeah. Robert, you're eating lunch alone again. Damn it. Oh, what are you going to do? Anyways, if you ever been to an auction, they say, okay, we're going to start the bidding on this art piece at $500. And people, oh, 500. Yeah. Okay. How about 750? And it just keeps going up and people keep bidding. And then the art piece sells for $5,000. So the point is it will sell for whatever it's worth. People will keep going up on it until they get to the point of that art piece of going, okay, I'm not paying $5,000 anymore. I'm not paying more than 5,000. It's the same thing with a house. Well, I want 900. And if we list it at 875, they're never going to pay 900. They'll pay 900 if that's what it's worth. But if that's not what it's worth, then they won't pay it. We see it all the time, especially in this market. I mean, Tess just said still today, she got a buyer into escrow for $70,000 above the list price. We bought a house our most recent purchase, we paid $80,000 above the list price because the agent priced it extremely low, knowing that he was going to get 30 plus 50 offers on it. And it appraised even, actually it appraised even higher than that. So it will go for what it's worth. It didn't appraise for much higher than that, but the point is people will keep bidding up on it. So I wrote down here, oh, the property's overpriced, call the seller immediately. Waiting to tell them is a form of malpractice. So when you know that you don't have any showings, you know that the property's overpriced, when a listing or a pending or a closing comes in that you know is going to make the property overpriced, tell the seller immediately, make a plan. Okay. I wrote down here, our success in getting listings always starts with the price. The sooner we price it right, the faster it sells. The sooner we price it right, the faster it sells, which means the smoother your business runs, the happier the seller is, and the more money you make. Always starts with the price. The sooner we price it right, the faster it sells, the smoother your business runs, the happier the seller is, and the more money you make. Have you ever had a seller give you a positive review when the home took 60 days to sell? No.
Who would?
Do you ever have a seller say, hey, you know what? Hey, you know what, John? I know you're looking to sell your house. My guy, Robert, he got our property sold in 45 days. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get the referrals. You're not going to get the repeat business. You're not going to get the testimonials. You're not going to get the positive reviews. If you don't price it right, and then you have to wait to get it sold longer, you have to have the price reduction conversations, price it right, get it sold. So that way they can say, hey, John, you should use my agent. Man, we had a bunch of showings first week. We ended up opening escrow in 10 days. It was great. In and out, full price. There you go. Smoother your business runs, the happier the seller is, the more money you make, and you're off and running. I wrote down here next for pricing property, the market changes on a regular basis. On a regular basis, you must be mentally prepared for it. The market changes on a regular basis. You must be mentally prepared for it. Mentally prepared is, again, studying the market stats, but you have to be mentally prepared for it so you know when you need to adjust the pricing on your listing presentations. We talked about this a little bit the other day. For the last year and a half, our listing presentations when it comes to pricing has been this. How much do you want to list it for? Sign here. That's been the listing presentation on price because we didn't know. Well, in some of the marketplaces, it's starting to soften a little bit. In some cases, we're not seeing as many offers. We're not seeing as far above list price. In some cases we are. But if you're not adapt to that, and then you go and say, oh, same mentality. Oh, what do you want to list it for? Let's sell it. You're going to have a problem. It changes. Things change. You have to be prepared for it, and you have to know it. All right. I wrote down here on pricing property, tell them the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it becomes. Excuse me, which means you have to be willing to walk away from a listing with an unrealistic seller. Tell them the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it becomes, which means you may have to walk away from a seller that's unrealistic or an unrealistic seller. We had a situation recently, Dulce in our Corona office. I think it was Dulce who had this happen. She went on a listing appointment and seller was unrealistic with price. And she just simply said, I can't help you. And very kindly walked away from the listing. Seller listed with somebody else and it expired. After it expired, that seller called Dulce and said, hey, I need to sell my house. You were the only agent that told me the truth. I want you to come over here and list it. She went over there and took the listing. Does that happen all the time? Of course not, because of ego. A seller would then have to go back on their ego to call that agent. But because she told them the truth, she ended up getting the listing at her price eventually. You have to be
That's
willing to
awesome.
walk away. You have to tell them the truth. Because if you don't tell them the truth, then you're just a liar. And in my opinion, and I learned this from Mike Ferry, if you're going to lie to the seller, they should take your license. That's it. He said that one day, and I agree. If you're going to lie to the seller, they should take your license. I could get you 900, no problem. Either you don't know what you're doing on pricing property, or you're lying to them because you priced it and you know it's an 850 market at best. They should take your license. Just my own personal opinion. They never will, because it's the NAR and you have to kill somebody before they'll take your license because they want your yearly dues. But that's the world we live in. I wrote down here next, make sure you understand your cost of taking a listing, the cost of servicing it, and the cost of getting it sold, so you have the right mindset about taking a particular listing. I wrote that down, but we really need, there's a class actually on that, on the cost of taking a listing, the cost of servicing it, and the cost of getting it sold. It is a very analytical driven class, which is why I've never really done it, but maybe I can do it. Well, I can do it. I hesitate to do it because it's such an analytical driven class. I don't know how many people are going to get it, but you have to understand the cost of servicing a listing, taking a listing, getting it sold. The reason for that, the basis of that particular numbers, is you have to remember you're in the for-profit business. And in order to do that, you have to look at the cost of taking a listing, servicing it, because if you figured out your hourly rate and you took a listing that was overpriced, and then you figured out how much time went into servicing it, getting it sold, all these other different things, you're going to find that the cost hourly is really high, and then your commission's only going to be here, so your profit's going to be much lower. So we'll talk about that maybe another day. I wrote down here, if all else fails, look at the price per square foot and compare it to others in the area. If all else fails, look at the price per square foot to other homes in the area and use that as a benchmark. I wrote down next, don't use Zillow as your benchmark.
So true.
Well, Zillow says this, if you're using Zillow as the benchmark, they might as well sell it themselves. That's just the truth, because they can do that. Anybody can do that. Anybody can use Zillow, Redfin as a benchmark, and they just sell it themselves. Why are they paying you? If you don't know how to, because if you don't know how to price property, how are you going to sell it accurately? Use the price per square foot if all else fails. Okay. I wrote down here next, our job as an agent is to place the home strategically in the market through price and to drive as many buyers as possible into that home to negotiate the contract. It's just that simple. See, I wrote that one down because sometimes we get in our heads too much about pricing property. We just get in our heads too much about pricing property, that it's got to be specific price. It's got to be the perfect price. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. Well, I don't know. What about this one? What about that one? What about this comp? What about that? You have to stop stressing over things. The job is to place the home strategically in the market through price and drive as many buyers as possible to negotiate the contract. And so if you don't have to be precise on price. You just have to be strategic with the price. It's a difference. I think it might be 850, it might be 825. I don't know. It's somewhere in there. What should I list it at? 825. Why? It's strategic. You have a strategic plan. It doesn't have to be so specific. Well, what if I listed at 819,998? God damn it. Why do we make it more complicated than it has to be? That's crazy.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Chris.
You know, in the beginning, the best way to price a property is, well, not the best way, but some other ways you can help is, have anybody even bothered looking at an appraisal after you get it from a listing? Or like from a buyer?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you look at the appraisal and you look so many of them and you actually take your time to go talk to an appraiser, you really see how they appraise it. And then you get an idea of how you're going to be able to comp the house, price it, learn GLA. It's a lot of information here. I don't know if anybody even looked at them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's a great point. And that helps as well in pricing property. To Chris's point, is you'll notice on an appraisal how much the upgrades are worth. So give you an example. Well, that house doesn't have a pool. Mine has a pool. Well, how much is the pool worth? If you look at previous appraisals, you can figure out how much that's worth. Or you can ask an appraiser, how much is a pool worth? Or you can do your own research to figure that out. But yes, to Chris's point, if you really know how to read appraisals or look at what appraisers look at, that does make a difference. Good point. Which brings me, actually, coincidentally, we're in sync. If you're having trouble with the price and the seller is not budging on a specific price, consider getting an appraisal done before the property goes on the market. We actually do this a number of times where we'll tell the seller, well, let's just get an appraisal done. You want 900. I don't see it in the market. I think it's worth 850 best, but you want 900. Let's get a third-party appraiser out here. They pay for it. Don't pay for it. Get a third-party appraiser out there and have them appraise it. And the benefit of that is A, the seller now knows what's realistic, and B, you have kind of some stuff to work with on potential buyers. So let's say the appraisal comes back at 850 and the buyer goes, well, we're going to offer 830. I have an appraisal right here at 850. So come up to 850 or we don't have a deal. So
or I was going to insert that maybe they pay for you. Tell them to get it, the appraisal, but at the closing table, you'll give them credit for it.
You could do that.
How about that?
Sure, if you want to.
Okay. Sorry.
I don't know. It's fine. You know, you're trying to be a deal maker. You try to put it together. I would this is me personally, but this is only because sometimes I can get very, very egotistical. I would have them pay for it because they're calling me a liar. And if they want to go out of their way to prove me wrong, then that's on their dime, not mine. That's my mentality. Doesn't make it right, but that's my mentality. If you want to challenge me that I don't know what I'm talking about, even though I do this every day, if you want to go out of your way to prove me wrong, you do research and you pay for it.
I challenge.
But that's the mentality, you know, with a seller. But to Alexis's point, look, you don't lose a deal if the seller says, okay, I'll list with you get you 15 grand, but if we close, I want my 450 back at closing. All right, you know, don't lose a deal over that. But that's just my mentality. Okay, doesn't make it right or wrong. I'm just sharing with you what I got. All right, very good. Very, very good. So that's what we got going on there in pricing property. I wrote down here next, last couple points. Michael brought this up a little bit of looking at the solds. Make sure when you're doing comps, you don't just look at when it was sold, it's when it went pending. This is exactly what Michael and I were talking about earlier. Now, in most cases, if it's sold, it went pending 30 days ago. So that's a pretty fair comp. But there are some times where the pending was 90 days ago, 60 days ago, and it could just be because they wanted a long escrow for a variety of different reasons, or maybe there was a loan issue, so it got pushed back. So you do have to look at the sold of when it went pending, because if a sold that went pending 30 days ago is more valuable than one that went pending 90 days ago. Okay, so you have to really consider that. But that being said, something I've learned from Tony Smith over the years, Mike Ferry coach and speaker, is that he predominantly focuses on the solds because that's what's actually happened. So you do have to make sure that you look at when they went pending, but that's what's actually happened. Actives you can look at to know what your competition is. So you know how to price it, so on and so forth, to beat your competition. Pendings are tough because you don't know what it's sold for. So, look at the solds first because that's reality, and then kind of go backwards from there. Okay, but definitely look at all of them as well as the cancels, the expires, things along those lines. All right, very good, very good, very good. So I had a question come in regards to right now, should we be more cautious, more aggressive when it comes to pricing based on some of the things we talked about earlier? Well, it all depends on what your market situation is. It has nothing to do with cautious or anything like that. It has anything to do with COVID, mandates, eviction moratorium, foreclosure moratorium. That has nothing to do with it. You have to look at your individual market to figure out is my individual market, or wherever I'm going to take this listing, I have to look at those market stats. I wrote down this last point here. Okay, then we'll wrap this up. Real estate is very, very local. It's very, very local. Why is this important in pricing property? Because if you take the MLS as a whole, for example, you could be getting misinformation, because what's happening in Irvine might not be what's happening in Lake Arrowhead or any other combination of that. So when you take the MLS as a whole and look at everything, it might not be as specific. You can't even take it as a county, because what's happening in West Covina might not be the same thing that's happening in Santa Monica, both LA County, or any other version of that. So real estate, when it comes to pricing property, is very, very local. So when you're looking at, should I go aggressive? Should I go conservative? You have to look at your local stuff. What's going on in this city, this neighborhood, and look at that. And then that's how you can kind of filter it out. Okay. And you obviously can't look at things nationally, because you can read national articles all day about, a little cool down in the marketplace. Okay. Well, where? Well, as you can see in Hershey, Pennsylvania, thank you. So glad that things are slowing down in Hershey, Pennsylvania. The chocolate world is going to be very disappointed. Everyone else in Southern California is fine. So you can't read national stuff. It's very local. So you have to be very careful with that when pricing property. Questions on anything I went over today? Oh, we got it.